Let's do it.
Yeah. Hi, Nick. Good to see you. I tried to, we tried to get this call done last week. We couldn't make it. And now finally I got you. So I'm quite excited to, talk to you, hear about your products. So, welcome to Launch Day.
Me too, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you. And this is a really cool project that you've got going on for indie makers.
Yeah, man. I hope it's going to work, man. Fingers crossed. Uh, and last week, actually, you kind of challenged me by telling me that it's been a long time that I'm like waiting to launch this thing. And so, I think it was good that you told me that because it made me think that, because, it's easy to get lost when you're indie making. You're just lost into your own ideas and you forget sometimes even your customers. So I just wanted to tell you that, I appreciated that. And so I think it's interesting when you're building a product with other indie makers as customers, because then you get crazy feedback all the time and you get super, good ideas and everything. So I just wanted to say that was cool.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that that's the biggest thing I've learned in building products and putting them out to the market is it's so important to have momentum and to be fast. And it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
perfect the first time. It just has to get out there.
Yeah. Cool,
Mhm.
man. So, what I like to do now with these interviews is the first thing I like to ask is like, how did you end up there? How did you end up being an indie maker? Like, how did you started, let's say, your career? And like, what's your journey to become an indie maker?
Totally. I think that I probably have a very different background from most of the people who are coming on this show. Like first and foremost, I'm a motion graphic designer. I come from a video production background, working on advertising, commercials, doing video editing, and animation in Adobe After Effects and Adobe Premiere, and I've been doing that for 10 plus years, like maybe 15 at this point. Um, but in that line of work, custom tools have really become super necessary. And so whether you're using DaVinci Resolve for video editing or you're using the Adobe suite, there's a lot of plugins and external third-party tools that people use for their work. Um,
Like, for example, like what?
so some of the oldest ones that people might be familiar with are like Red Giant plugins. And those, I believe they have those for both DaVinci Resolve and the Adobe Suite. And that's for things like putting a glow on your footage or fancy transitions. And like, it's
Hmm.
all of these effects that were built by companies not from Adobe and then they sold them.
Yeah, like there's an entire ecosystem of these plugins. So I'm not, obviously, it's not my industry,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember when I did my Twitter course, I had to learn, basic of editing. I used DaVinci because it was a video course. And I remember that because I didn't make the right choice when recording the audio, there was a lot of pop sounds and breathing sounds. And I found a plugin that could erase all these sounds. So that just, I'm just saying that as
Exactly.
an example.
Exactly. And so
So, and it's
like
like an entire
it's
ecosystem, kind of like WordPress plugins for people who are more familiar with that. It's like hundreds and thousands of tools that you can add onto your video,
exactly.
workflow.
Exactly. And this stuff has gotten more and more popular the last few years. Like there's a lot more people making education around how to build these tools. The APIs themselves are expanding and giving you more like workflow capabilities in the apps. So like they used to be really, really limited and they're really expanding and investing a lot so that developers can build tools on top of these apps. Because like at the end of the day, Adobe, Blackmagic, it's way cheaper for them and easier to be like, hey, we're just gonna give you guys the scripting capability and the API to build the tools you want, rather than us having to build every tiny thing that people ask for.
And that's funny because like I'm just it scares me when I hear that you have to work with an API made by Adobe. I don't know why, but it seems like
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
not going to be the greatest developer experience. So how is it?
Yeah, it's not the greatest developer experience. It could be
Yeah.
improved for
Okay.
sure. it has its quirks and its bugs, and like there's a lot of things that are no longer supported. Like every few years, the standard procedures change. Like there's
Yeah.
something old called the ExtendScript toolkit, which before Creative Cloud was ever a thing, that was like the standard way that you could write and debug scripts and plugins for Adobe tools. That's no longer supported. It was just sunset like 5+ years ago. Um, there's
Okay.
no there's no new tool that's comparable to it. Um, you can build scripts using Adobe's own language called ExtendScript, which is basically modified JavaScript. There's just a lot of weird quirks that they have, but there is a lot of
Proprietary stuff
documentation.
that, yeah. Oh, okay. That's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a lot of documentation. In general, the people working on these tools are really open to collaboration, answering questions in forums and like Slack groups and Discords and stuff. Um, at the end, like we are building on top of a platform owned by a large company, and they could at any time, look at a plugin and be like, "Oh, hey, that's cool. We'll just build it in, put it in our app, and now, you have no more customers." That is
Or
something
they
to
could
worry
say the
about.
reverse and like we don't want you to do that, so we're removing this capability. That's scary.
Yeah, sometimes capabilities do get removed. And I don't think this has happened like recently, but in the far away past, there have been cases where Adobe actually acquired plugins. Like they saw on the market, oh, hey, these plugins are cool, these effects are cool. Let's just buy out this company and put it into the app. So that's like the flip side, best case scenario.
Yeah, you have kind of like an exit path potentially, but that's kind of like a
Yeah,
long shot. But
I haven't heard any stories of them doing that recently. I think it's more likely that they'll just build it themselves if a tool is really popular and put it in for free. But yeah, in the far away past, they did just buy up companies.
yeah, okay. I see. Maybe they changed their strategy. And I guess you might have to like support also older version. Like the longer. I guess when you first launch your plugin, you mostly care about the recent ones. But every year, new Adobe like 24, 25, whatever. I don't remember which one. And
Yep.
then you end up, having to support all of these legacy Photoshop. I mean, not in your case, but like Premiere, whatever. So
Oh yeah, yeah. There's pretty much every major version, like every year. Things don't break by default, but there's like inherently changes that have to be made. Either things can be improved because there's new capabilities that were added, or something was changed that is broken. And when you're building, some people do just build their plugins for the latest version, but there's actually a lot of individuals and businesses that don't use the latest version because the latest
yeah.
version can be buggy. Like it's not supposed to be, but like often with new features, there's new bugs. So it's really
And
common,
also
especially
like
for businesses, to use
yeah, and
last year's
especially if you
version.
depend on a very niche plugin that is only working with an old version, then you're going to stick with that version because you cannot live
Yeah,
without that plugin. So
yeah,
yeah, oh my god, yeah. So that's a very different environment than let's say building a web SaaS, like building a plugin for desktop software. Okay, so you were in this motion and animation and video world, this motion designer
right.
career. So you were working for, I guess, what were you doing, like freelancing or like were you working for studios? What was it like?
Yeah, so I've had a mix of freelance and full time jobs. I worked for some early streaming companies, like way before the whole like current streaming landscape.
Yeah,
And back in like 2016, 2017, when all that stuff was first getting figured out, just doing motion graphics for them. And then I was doing freelance advertising in Los Angeles and New York on commercials for like Taco Bell and Volkswagen, Versace, and like all sorts of random companies. Just working with advertising agencies. After doing that for a few years, I ended up getting a full time job opportunity with Adobe directly to focus on their Adobe stock offering. And so Adobe Stock
Yeah.
is sort of like Getty Images or Shutterstock, but they have all sorts of templates for their products. So I was working there, which was fun, and I learned a lot more about the the products and sort of the scripting side and the plugin side, and that's something that I hadn't really delved into before working there. But once I was working there and talking to different engineers in other departments, I realized that it wasn't as intimidating as I thought to learn. And it's not like some magical thing that only a few people have access to. There's lots of documentation. There's lots of ways to like get started with small projects. And so I started building my own small projects
And
after
so at this
leaving
time,
Adobe.
you didn't have a coding background or anything.
No, not really.
So you kind of like learn coding at this moment, like for this, was it like what inspired you to start, you know, coding or something?
Yeah, I guess like what's interesting about motion graphics is a lot of people who use After Effects have a really light introduction to coding through expressions inside After Effects. And so you can write very, very simple stripped down expression code for procedural animation. And so that's
Yeah.
how I like that was like my very first introduction to coding years and years ago, is learning how to write expressions to like animate something moving back and forth procedurally or like link colors together procedurally. And it's just like one step up from that to learn how to use scripting to automate actions in the program.
Yeah.
And then
It
you know you
reminds
keep
me,
building on those skills.
yeah, it reminds me of the time of Flash, where you had action script. So that's, you know, for old timers, but I remember that when I started 20 years ago doing web, Flash was still a thing, and you had this action script, I think, language to, you know, make your Flash animations dynamic. And that
Yep.
was,
Yep.
you know, for a lot of designers, that was also, yeah, this kind of, so is that something like that? I guess something similar, like,
Very
yeah,
similar. Very similar.
okay.
Yeah. So that was my like very first introduction to it, and I had been using other people's tools and plugins for a long time. But yeah, after working at Adobe for a year and a half, I left because I wanted to sort of get back to doing my own creative pursuits, and I started building my own scripts and plugins and templates and stuff, and it really wasn't as challenging as I had thought before trying it.
That's super interesting journey, man, because and it must give you a very unique edge and kind of maybe an advantage, because I don't think that's a market a lot of people are building for. You know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe, but you don't have like 10,000 indie makers chasing this thing.
No,
So,
no.
you know,
I think that the ecosystem is very much people who are building for themselves. Like it's like, hey, I have this problem when I'm working on projects.
yeah.
I need to build a solution. It's driving me crazy. And then some of those people build a solution and then, you know, package it up and put it out there on Gumroad or on other platforms.
Oh yeah, on Gumroad. Yeah, okay, they sell like their script or like their tools like this. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. So now I'm curious to know what you built. Like, so can you start, you know, telling us about that, and maybe if it's show us a demo, you know, whatever is useful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Um, okay. So first I'll show you sort of all the tools that I built, and then I'll walk you through one of them. So this is a platform that is specific to Adobe tools. Mostly, well, they have some other tools on there, but most of the users are for After Effects and Premiere Pro.
Okay.
And if we go to the homepage here, there's tons of products on this website called AE Scripts, and it covers, you know, everything from text in a box to easing animation, different compositing workflows, all sorts of stuff. So over the past few years, I have built a few scripts and plugins that live on this website, and people can click through to the product page, and you see some nice design, a little promo video about it, how it works, and then you can download and install and use it. This product is a little utility that helps you like copy and paste font settings between layers. You'd think that would be built in. It's not built in, so I built a little plugin for it. A lot of the products on here are actually name your own price. So you could enter $0 and get a lot of these tools.
Okay.
And that sort of gets back to what I was saying before, where a lot of people are building tools for themselves and then just putting it out there.
And there's this community vibe and this kind of like positive, community thing where people help each other, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And so these are 4 different tools that I've built in the past. And I did have a development partner on these projects. Let me go over to his little page. This guy is Nate Lavelle, and he and I worked together on 4 plugins in the past, and so he helped with the C++ side of building those tools.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so that's sort of an overview of like the ecosystem. And there's, like I said before, there's like hundreds of tools here. But these are just some of the ones that I've built. Most recently, I built this tool called Captioneer. And this is the product that I'm really excited to talk about today, because this is a tool for building animated captions inside Premiere Pro.
Okay. Oh, yeah, okay, I see. So very relevant to nowadays with all the captions on social media and everything.
Right. So this sort of thing where like, this is sort of like the Descript style of captions where it is, animating a box behind the text. Very helpful for social media videos. Like every video these days has to have captions on it. Most videos are muted, seen on social media. And so the captions just really help people stick when they're seeing your videos. There's a lot of tools for this market, but there's not a lot of tools inside video editing applications.
Exactly, because I've done a lot of research on that actually for my own needs. And indeed, when you're in an editing, you can use a separate tool for this, but once you want to get into customizing or making it look like on brand and everything, it becomes a bit more difficult.
Yeah, it's very manual. It's a very manual, tedious process that editors have to go through. And, there's all these like newer AI platforms that are like, oh, we automate blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, the designs are ugly. They sort of do 80% of the work, and then you have to do 20% by hand. Things are spelled wrong. It can't identify languages correctly. Like, they sort of work, but if you're a business, if you really care about your branding, you're going to hire an editor to do that. And so tools like this are designed for the editors to have better tools.
Yeah, it's B2B, strict B2B, like for people who are like on the next level. Because like if you just do what you said, the AI stuff, like for example, I use often, and it's just like, it's better than nothing. And because it's just important to have these captions,
than nothing.
And if you don't really care about, like if you're not at this level where you're like, oh, my brand and like everything, then it's fine. Even though it's not ideal, it's okay. But like, yeah, so it's really B2B tool, or like for people who want like more control. So, okay, super interesting. And I see this one is $100 and there is no pay what you want button this time. So that's
correct. Yeah. So this one is a paid tool. So my tools that I've put out in the past before this tool were actually all name your own price. And what I found after around 2 years of building name your own price tools is about 5% of people pay any amount. So that they'll pay like $1 or $5, $10, somewhere in there. But only about 5% of people pay anything. That's from my own data.
Now the question is, how many people would have paid? And that's, because I guess...
Yeah.
maybe you captured everybody anyway. I don't know, or half of people who would have
Totally.
paid.
And maybe a lot of people would pay for those name your own price tools, and that's great. But for me, a lot of these other tools in the past were like small utilities that I built for myself for projects that I was working on. Like this project is another one that I'm really proud of.
Super
It says
resizing. Okay.
$9.99, but it's really name your own price. This one helps you resize projects inside After Effects. So if you're going from
Yeah, I
HD
see.
to 4K, back and forth. So a lot of people probably would have bought many of these tools at the full price, but I just wanted to get them out there. And so now these four tools are used by like 10,000 people.
Wow. So it's kind of like
So
distribution, I guess, with this platform and everything. They know you, so you can shoot them an email about Captioneer, this new tool, I guess.
it is, yeah, that is an advantage. And there are a lot of people who, knew me for my other tools who then ended up buying the latest one. And Captioneer was a much bigger project with a lot more going into it and ongoing support. So that's why it has like a flat price.
Yeah,
It
but that's
also
super interesting
has a nice
strategy.
little.
I see. Yeah, I was just going to say, it's a good strategy to start making a name for yourself, because like you're asking $100 or like a subscription. So like for this kind of plugins, I guess it can be steep for a lot of people, but like they know you now, you have credibility, so it's 10 times easier to sell. So that's an interesting strategy to both like for you for learning and improving, but also by doing that in a way that's free or like almost free, then you can get a lot of credibility for when you launch a big thing. So that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was good practice to put out tools for like free and low cost before building a bigger tool because, you learn a lot through marketing and support for customers, like fixing bugs and things. All that stuff's really important. So I'm glad that I ironed out a lot of that stuff before putting out a bigger tool. Um, so then also with Captioneer, I do have a whole website for it, which uh, has sort of the same product page that we were just looking, but it's this really sleek website design with testimonials, user videos. So these are all real users who use the product.
Wow, cool.
Um, and then a list of all the presets. This is sort of the same thing as on the other product page, but just as a dedicated website.
It's
And what
really
I
cool.
just
How did
did,
you build a How did you build a website? It looks cool.
thank you. So the website was built in Framer, and the website I worked with a Framer designer, super talented. People watching may know who he is, but his name is Nick. Nick Stepuk. I think that's how you pronounce it. And he's a fantastic Framer designer, builds a lot of templates. And so I reached out to him maybe 2 years ago, a year ago, when we were first building the website, and commissioned him for this custom project. Um, Here is his website where he sells other templates for Framer and stuff. But a lot of
Wow,
these
awesome.
designers who are building templates and products, if you need a custom project, you can reach out to them and just commission them for it. So that's what I did.
That's awesome. And so now you have the credibility, you have the awesome landing page. I want to see the product.
Okay, yeah, let's do it. All right, let me minimize this. All right, so if people aren't familiar with Premiere Pro, we are now in Premiere Pro. Down here is the timeline. Up here is the program monitor. As I scroll through here, you'll see the video playback. And this is Rob Walling from Lemon Squeezy talking on some podcast about, funding or whatever. So the tool that I built is called Captioneer. And if I come over to Window Extensions, oops, that's the wrong extension. I don't want to open that one.
Yeah. It's funny because I think I know the person who recorded that podcast because I used to have a podcast with James McKinven who manages all the podcasting of Lemon Squeezy. So that's quite
Oh,
interesting
cool.
that's the one you chose. Yeah. So
Okay, so this is an extension. You go to Window, Extensions, Captioneer, and this is where a bunch of other third-party tools are going to show up. and then it lives in its own little panel.
Yeah.
Before I show you Captioneer, I'll show you why it's necessary. So, to add captions to this video is normally really tedious. You would normally transcribe the video. And so there would be a button here that says auto transcribe. You hit it, and then Adobe has a way to auto transcribe your audio. So now when we play this back,
Yeah, okay.
right, so you have text time to your video.
Yeah, we can see that the text seems accurate and it's timed properly, but it's not displaying. It's just like information.
It's not displaying, right. So then you have to come over to this other tab called Captions. We can say Create Captions, and then you have these preferences. I'll just, without going into super detail on this, I'll just edit this. This is just going to be like how many characters are showing on screen at a time. So now it's spit out that auto transcription, and we have text on screen.
Cool.
But it's just at the bottom of the screen. We can't move it around past its bounds completely. Like it's sort of blocked in by this. You can't actually go to the edge of the frame. And then to change the design, you're really limited to these options over here on the right hand side. So we can add a box and we can start to design this. But you have to start thinking about the design and building it. If you're not a designer, that's not your forte. And
there's not any kind of motion type design. It's mostly caption. There's not like animations or anything fancy like that, it seems.
Yep, there is no animation. And with these captions, there's never going to be animation. And so these are just static. And even though you could design this, and we could design this better if we spent a little more time.
Yeah. You could make it look decent.
Yeah, it's still going to be really limited. So I'll show you something else. There's this other feature inside Premiere Pro called Motion Graphics Templates. So over here in this Graphics Templates tab, if I drag this onto the video, this is showing a motion graphics template. And it's a preset that we can then edit. So we could say Rob Walling, and then that text updates. And it's this procedural animation that is going to update with the text. Yeah. These templates are built in Adobe After Effects, exported as a compressed file, and then you can bring them into the Premiere Pro timeline.
Okay.
So now we have animation, we have a preset template, but we need to get all the text and timing from our ugly captions into our templates.
Oh, it's not.
Do that by.
Oh, I thought because when I saw that, I'm like, well, we don't need your product. It seems perfect. But okay, now I understand.
That's what you would think.
The main piece is missing. The main piece is missing. Okay.
So to get the text,
do everything manually. Yeah.
Yep. So to get the text from these captions into here, you'd have to select one, copy it, select the other, paste it in. Okay, great. We've done one of them. Now let's do the next one. Copy and paste this.
Yeah, no,
drag
that's a
it out.
nightmare. Yeah.
You're seeing how painful this is.
I do this just with video memes on CapCut. There's like only 3 sentences, but that's already annoying. So I can imagine on a long video.
So this is the bulk of what Captioneer is doing. Is if we come over to Captioneer, we can come to this tab called Import Captions. We can select the captions track, which is this orange track right here. We can come down.
Generated already by Adobe.
Right, exactly. So this transcription was built in. We already put it in here. And now we can select a template just like we were doing before from the graphics templates. So I'll pick this one, just like text in a box. Text input, it just has one input, so it's fine. And then we come down to the 4th tab called Create. We select a video track, and these tracks correspond to these tracks here. Hit Add. And then it does all of that tedious work of pushing that text and timing into those animated captions.
Finally, it looks like it should.
It looks like it should.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we can select all of them and just, move them down to where we need them.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's going crazy because my resolution, but
Yeah, yeah. Because I asked you to
I'm
make it
trying
a
to drag
bit
it.
lower resolution so it's easier to view because you have like a huge monitor. So, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so that's so all of these workarounds are just to use a template for captions inside Premiere. And so I tried to build this extension to take away all that manual work, and so you can just focus on editing your video and adding your animated captions.
You know, I love this type of products that are like obvious that it should exist. Like it's just like, yes, you know, it should be, you know, like it just makes sense. There's no, you don't need to think for 10 seconds to imagine what is the use case. It's just like, yeah, if you're doing short videos or any kind of like videos for social media, you need this. I mean, if you're at this level that you need kind of like brand control and everything, if you're like starting to become a bit professional, then it becomes, you know, no brainer per, you know, to have. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
it's definitely for people who are editors who are already using Adobe Premiere, right? Um, or if you're an animator and you want to build your own designs in After Effects and bring them into Premiere. It's designed for those two people.
Yeah.
And lastly, if you're someone who really just wants control over everything you're making and you want to learn Premiere and jump in here and do captions, this is going to be a better workflow than doing it by hand. Um, yeah, so it's really for all the people
And
who
so
want to jump
can you
in
still
Premiere.
customize the style or can you still create your own templates with this?
You can, and so that's actually the coolest part about this is if we select one of these blocks, and I'll select this one here. Um, when we select that template, there's all of these controls that show up here in this properties panel. And all of these controls are going to customize the animation. So we could procedurally change the characters per line, and then it's going to change
Yeah.
how the text reflows, position, scale, and all that. I think it's just lagging a bit because the resolution thing. We could change the alignment of the text, all these sort of graphic adjustments that you would want. Um, the font, the colors, all of this stuff is going to be customizable based on what you want. If you want to just stick with the presets, you can. But if you have
Yeah.
some sort of brand template that you're trying to match, all of that stuff is super customizable. Um, and it's not just customizable in, you know, one of the presets. It's customizable across all of them. And they all have different settings based on the sort of animation. So like this one is a glitch animation. It's going to have things related to the glitch. This one is a box. It has things related to the
Yeah,
box.
okay. Okay, I see. Yes, you're covering all bases. So I'm just curious now, because I'm like, how hard was it to build? Like, what was the hard thing to build there? What I'm not saying it's not. I'm just curious. Like, what was the thing that made it, you know, take it time to build this?
Yeah, so the easiest part is sending the data from these captions into these Mogurt templates. Like that's the easiest thing. And that when I, you know, in like an afternoon, I was like, okay, cool. I have this rigged up as a little script that can send this data back and forth. That's fine. The much harder part is building a nice UI for the extension. Extensions in the Adobe suite are called CEP panels. I think that's like the Common Extensibility Platform or something. It's Adobe's own own framework, and it's a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And a lot of extensions. I guess I don't really want to put some other tools on blast, and like a lot of other tools have really wonky UIs that don't match Premiere Pro. They can be really difficult to use. They might not reflow when you like move the window around, not be responsive. So building the UI was definitely a challenge.
I
We
see.
wanted to
And it may be
match.
because what you said earlier that a lot of these tools, they're built by one person who has this problem and they're just like solving their problem. So they don't really necessarily think about UI. And then if you don't have that much competition, then there's not a big push to make the great UI. So
Yeah, yeah. And then secondly, like once you have this basic workflow down, that's great. But then there's a lot of things added onto this as part of the extension that help your workflow. So for example, like this graphic here, we updated the graphic. And while it doesn't look the best, in order to paste that change to the rest of the sequence, there's no built-in way to do that in Premiere. There's no way to say like, oh, I want to paste these settings. So we built a little utility into Captioneer to copy those settings. Boom, they're copied. And we can select one and paste it. And then it updates. Or we could paste all of them.
So you have to build your own UI for things that seem like basic, like copy-paste of the settings or apply all or something like that. You have to build your own UI for that. I see.
Well, we have to build the UI, but we also have to figure out, like, technically how that stuff is going to work using the API in Premiere Pro. And so there's a lot of things
I see.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that aren't built in, and you have to figure out workarounds for. For example, like this caption track. To read this caption track directly and send this data, there's no built-in way to do that. We figured out our own method in order to send that data back and forth. And you have to get creative. You have to get creative with coding and figuring out workflows. So you asked, like, what was the hardest part? So building the UI and figuring out extra utilities was hard. The other hardest part is actually building these templates. Like designing these templates in After Effects and then building them so that they work procedurally with any language, any text that you input, any timing. Building that was also extremely challenging. And that, that all happens in the After Effects side. And the whole extension is not valuable unless you have good templates to go along with it.
Yeah, for sure. I see. And did you have to build, so is it just for Premiere or does it work with other editing tools? Because I assume it would be a whole new can of worms in terms of coding.
It only works with Premiere Pro because these templates, these motion graphics templates, are proprietary to Adobe Premiere and After Effects.
I see. Okay.
So you have to build these in After Effects. You can only use them in Premiere Pro. And so that's something that we're locked in that ecosystem.
Yeah, and I guess, if you want to build a plugin for DaVinci, then it's a new language. It's a new thing. It's an entirely new way. It's like building, like it used to be that you had to, if you want to build a mobile app, you have to learn how to code for Android and then you have to learn to code for iOS. Now you have wrappers around it that allow you to do both at once, sort of. But yeah, you're still in this ecosystem of products. They all have their own things. And, it's a completely different job to do a plugin for one or the other, I guess.
Yeah, it is completely different. And the biggest part of it being completely different is like not even the language, but the architecture of the program is so different between Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, Avid. Like they all work so differently. So the logic of what you're figuring out might be completely different between those programs.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, it's a different approach. Like the problem has to be solved almost differently. Yeah, okay, I see. Wow, this is cool, man. So can you tell us a bit more now about like, how much does this cost? How can people get this? I'm curious about that.
Absolutely, yeah. So the product itself, we have a few different pricing models. So in building this tool, I was really, considering the pricing, and a lot of the people using these tools are video editors, people from all over the world in other countries, and I wanted to try to make it affordable to everyone. And so what we ended up going with is there is a one-time purchase option for $100. And this is really unique among these tools because most of these tools have to route back to some sort of server, like OpenAI's Whisper server, or other proprietary things that they're using, and then they have to pay for that. So then they pass that cost on to customers. With the way that we built this tool, relying on Adobe's transcription, we don't have any of those costs, so we can offer a one-time purchase.
And the price is interesting because like I think it's a good model. Like it really makes me hesitate as a customer. Like 10 per month or 100 lifetime, you know, because usually it's going to be 10 per month and like 200 lifetime. And then it's kind of like, okay, if I really believe I can take lifetime, but it's scary. But here it's kind of like, it's really a choice between, you know, wanting to subscribe or not wanting to subscribe. Like, but the value and the cost of the value seems similar. Like, it's not like a scheme to squeeze the most money out of people, is what I mean.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel like a lot of pricing pages that you see, like they feel like they're trying to trick you into like picking some option that is going to upcharge you for something else that you're going to forget about the billing. I wanted to make it really simple. Originally, we were going to just have a one-time purchase. After talking to enough people, a lot of people said like, hey, I might want this for 1 month when I'm working on a project, but I might not need it for the next 3 months until I do another project like that. And so I thought, okay, how can I appeal to those people too? And so that's when I added the subscription option. You could turn it on, turn it off, pause it, whatever. And so, you know, both these options, it's the same exact product. You get the extension, you get all the presets. It's just, do you want to pay $10 a month and pause it? Or would you rather just pay it and own it and not worry about it again?
And that actually gives me a question, like, is it hard to manage the on and off state in the plugin?
Yes. Yes.
Because I assume, you know, with Adobe thing, it was like, how the fuck do you manage that?
It was very complicated to figure out, actually. So choosing to offer both of these was a technical challenge, because we wanted to have everything packaged in one extension. So maybe you start with the subscription, and then after a month, you're like, actually, I just want to buy this. Like, I don't want to be on a subscription anymore. And so you can just buy a lifetime license, enter that code. And so it was very tricky to figure out how to get both those work. On the back end, we are using Lemon Squeezy. So these are all Lemon Squeezy products. You can download the trial for free. It's a 2-week trial. Gives you access to everything. And then at the end, it locks you out unless you buy a license.
Okay. And so...
Yeah.
And because of Lemon Squeezy, like maybe you're using... And how are you communicating between the plugin inside? Like, how does the plugin know that the subscription ran over? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so we have a mix of our own license server and Lemon Squeezy's license framework. And if you buy the product on AE Scripts, they actually have a different license framework. So there's also that complexity of figuring out which platform someone bought it from. But basically, when you activate the product, it is checking certain things on your system. And then if the timer runs out, it locks you out. And then when you enter a license, it just pings the server and says, hey, is this active? And then it activates it on your computer.
Yeah, I see. Okay, cool.
Yeah, because I never had to solve this problem.
So
yeah, every time you use the product, it's not like communicating to a server constantly. Like, hey, are you active right now this instant? It's like we have lock and unlock states saved somewhere.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Cool, man. And I really appreciate you, diving into the details and telling me, because that's super interesting, I think. And I hope it's interesting for people listening as well. So what's the discount that you're giving for the launch day?
Absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to do something special for the launch day products and for everyone watching. So the product is normally, $100, but we're going to do 50% off for 1 week. So 1 full week from the time that this comes out, it'll be 50% off either subscription or lifetime. So you can pick whichever one. If you choose a subscription, then it'll continue running as long as you have the subscription active. So it would be $5 a month, or the lifetime version is $50 instead of $100. So yeah, I hope people are excited about it, willing to try it. you can always download the free trial first, and then if you like it in that 1 week, buy it with a discount.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I really appreciate you giving a big discount because I really think this can be cool if everybody does that. So I'm glad you played the game. And I just had one last question, and it's why did you put 10 and 100 instead of 9 and 99 in the pricing? Because that's interesting. Because years ago I read that it was better, so now I stuck with this, and I always put a 9 instead of the next decimal. But just curious.
Yeah, you know, there are a lot of people who talk about the psychology of pricing and how like, oh, if you put 99, it looks like it's less than 100, or if you put 89 or 87, people
Yeah.
don't think about the math the same way. But to me, I just wanted to make it easy. Like if I saw a product that says 87.99, to me, I'm really thinking that's $100. Like I'm just rounding up to like
87.99 is super weird, but yeah, that would be funny.
yeah, like I'm
the
just
most
like rounding up
optimized,
in my head.
scientifically optimized price, 87.99.
Right.
Yeah, that would be funny.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just make it like a flat, easy number. You see it, it's burned into your memory. You understand the pricing. It's simple. I'm not trying to trick anyone with like, oh, should I do 6 months or 12 months? Like, it's just a flat, easy thing.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Awesome. Look, I really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed interviewing you. So I hope this brings you as much awareness and sales, as possible. I really hope, this brings you that. So thanks, man.
Thank you, too. This was super fun. Thanks for having me. And I'm excited to see the whole cohort when it comes out.
Awesome. Cheers.
Cheers.